better off keeping our powder dry until we can see that we really do have enough weight, financial weight, to have a proper conversation with them. I have to tell you something about what it means to have the Community Benefit Society, so that you know what you'll be a member of at the point any of you actually buy your shares. When you pledge to buy shares, it's not a binding thing, but once you've actually bought your shares, it's important that you know what you've bought into. So the Community Benefit Society, no matter how many shares you've bought, one member of the society, one vote. There will be elections on an annual basis so that you get a refreshed and renewed management committee. The 7 of us will carry on until the point where we've bought the pub, got it set and running, and we'll have elections then probably at the end of the year, or towards the end of the year, is my best guess, but we'll be clear on that later on. But in a system of one member, one vote, we'll have elections. Those elections would elect a committee of 6, 8, 9 people, something like that, with all of the normal governance and roles in that committee that you would expect in any other type of organisation, such as a council or those sorts of things. There'll be a chair, there'll be a secretary, there'll be a treasurer, and so on. The minutes would, the meetings would be minuted. There would be access to that. There'll be proper, normal, transparent governance, so that anyone who has signed off and bought shares can see that their money is being properly managed and looked after and has a voice in that. On the shares, we're still of a mind that we need to aim to raise £500,000. The shares will be priced at £1 each, but they'll be sold in blocks of 100, just to keep it administratively sensible. So the minimum investment would be £100. Obviously, we'd expect and hope that most people that buy shares would invest something more than that. Shares, when you buy shares, they're recorded. You get a share certificate, just as you would as if you bought it in another registered company. And you have that share. You own that share, but you're not able to sell it on an open market. It's a kind of a closed market. It's not going to be we won't be a quoted business or anything like that. The shares would have no value externally. They'll always be worth the £1 that you paid for each share at the beginning. They won't float up and down as such. You own them if you want to, in later times, if you wanted or needed to sell them. There'll be a process by which you could do that via the management committee that exists at that time. So if you were selling your house, no longer interested in being in Portlow or connected to Portlow and wanted to pass your shares on, there'll be a process to do that. If a shareholder unfortunately passed away and needed to pass the shares to somebody else, there'll be a process to manage that. What we won't be able to do is promise people that there'll be enough of a fund to buy unlimited amounts of shares back once they're issued. So when you buy into this process, you're making a commitment for a longer term than you might otherwise do with a commercial venture. This is a no interest, no dividend, no exit policy kind of investment. You know? So the idea is you put your money in because you're serving the community and you're protecting the pub for the community, you're protecting the community itself. You're doing that, and the idea is that you're leaving your money there for that. If you need to get it back, what I imagine will happen is the management committee would set aside a certain amount of money at the start of each year and say, we've got this pot of money that we could buy shares back with through the course of the year if we really had to. But what we're looking for is people looking to put their money in and accept that the purpose it's serving is to preserve and protect the pub for all of us. The rules of the Benefit Society would permit for us to pay interest or dividends on those shares in the future, but I wouldn't want anyone to invest at this stage believing that they're going to get that return. I think we're going to find it hard enough to raise all of the money and to serve the pub well before we get too clever and saying and there's going to be a percentage return. So I think anyone going into it ought to appreciate that you're going in, your money's going to be there, you'll be able to see it in the pub every day, but you can't take it back out. you can, but you're not likely to take it back out. The only other thing that I wanted to mention on this kind of structural stuff is, well, yeah, if in the future we found that we were unable to sustain the pub, so we buy the pub, we run it, it goes for a little while, and we realise that we can't make it work, so I'm rolling forward 3 years or something like that, and we decide that we have to stop and give up, and we had to sell the building. If we sell the building, and let's say we sold it for exactly what we bought it for, then we'd be able to give everybody their share money back exactly what they put in, £1 for £1. If we sold it for less and we didn't have any reserves to top that up, then you'd get less back than you'd originally put in by whatever that ratio would be. If we sold it for more, so if we actually turned a profit on the property, it's important to know before the point of investment that profit cannot come back to shareholders. That profit is locked in to that benefit society. So if we failed with the pub, we had to sell the building and take our money back out, our benefit society that we're setting up, our co-op, would still have that money. We could give back the £1 per share for all the people that had put it in. If we were left with a surplus then, because we did a good deal on the property, if we were left with a surplus then, we'd need to keep that in the community somehow, either in the Community Benefit Society carrying on and doing other good work for us, or we give it to another benefit society locally or in some other way like that. But the important thing is you can't make a profit on the shares. And I think a bit like explaining you're not going to get an interest or you're not going to get a dividend, I think they're important steps to know. The whole of that lot that I just said is like a 30-page set of rules called the Model Rules for a Benefit Society that we've signed up to. As I say, they're registering now with the Financial Conduct Authority. When that's signed off, we'll make all of those rules available so that any time when we get to the point where you're going to physically pay for shares as opposed to pledge, you can read the whole lot if you want to. If you don't want to read the whole lot, but you want to ask any other questions about that at any stage, you can ask any one of us, and we'll do our best to try and explain it. There's quite a lot of information there, but I think there are important things that you know. One, this is a bona fide company that's being set up, so it's properly registered, will be properly managed, and your money is safely managed in there. And two, you know the rules on which that will operate and the rules which are governing your money so that you can feel comfortable that you're doing a good thing. Okay, that's all I want to say for now. Brian's going to move on and talk about going beyond pledges and something about where we go next with the business plan. Thank you.
Good evening all, my name's Brian Benson, for those of you who don't know me. So we've spent the last 6 weeks pulling together quite a comprehensive business plan. You might think, well, why do we need such a weighty document? Well, we have to convince you as potential investors that it's a worthwhile investment. So you've got to see the financial details, the marketing details, what our plans for the pub are, etc. And we've also got to convince St Austell Brewery that we are a viable bidder for this pub and we can make a go of it, that they're not just going to sell us it and it's going to collapse next week. So we all 7 of us have put quite a lot of work into this business plan. I'll just sort of talk you through a few bits of it. We were hoping to have it ready for tonight. There's just some, and it is a live document, so it's always evolving. We change our minds on things, and we're not politicians, so we don't say we don't get things wrong or we don't change our minds. We do get things wrong. We then learn another fact, or we do change our minds, and we have to come back to the plan and change things around a little bit. So we're not quite there yet. We're doing the share pledge this evening, or opening the share pledge this evening. For those of you that want to see the business plan before you're prepared to make a pledge commitment, which is a perfectly reasonable position, then this business plan will be available sometime next week. We've set ourselves a deadline to get this. It will be online at the on the website, or you can request it from any of us and or email into the Portloeship email address, and we'll send you out a copy. So it will be available to everyone. So we've done a sort of a few notes on our objectives, on our plan, what we intend to do to the pub, what we envisage improvements we can make to the pub, be that food, be it a shop area, be it a cafe area, whatever that might be. Where we are now at the moment, as you say, we've set up the Community Benefit Society now. We've engaged with the community. Tony will talk to you about grants shortly and any update that he's got on the grants that are available to us. We're launching the pledge support from tonight, and that will run for a period of 1 month. And then at the end of that 1 month, added to the grant situation, any grants we've got in, any other donations that have come in, the quiz night seems to be a good contributor towards this, but anything else we've got in, we'll then, in a month's time, we'll know roughly where we are in terms of amount of money in the pot. And at that point, we're going to go engage with the brewery and try and negotiate. Obviously, if at any point through that process we're just miles off, then we'll come back and tell you we're just miles off, and we'll have to rethink about how we might tackle it. There are some loans available. There are National Lottery loans available. There may be other ways, but this is our sort of key way that we're trying to tackle it at the moment. If and when the brewery engage with us and we're starting to talk about price, and we know they've got an asking price, we can only offer what money we can raise initially, so whatever that is. If the brewery are engaging with us at that point, we'll then come back and do the formal share offer. And as part of that formal share offer, you will receive a full, as part of the business plan, there's a full share prospectus. So talking about some of those things Steve's just been mentioning there in terms of interest, what if I die, how do I sell my shares back, etc., etc., etc. That full share prospectus will come out as an appendix to the business plan and will be available online. So at the time we're actually asking for hard cash, you will be investing that hard cash against a share prospectus as well as the business plan. And then really once we buy the pub, hopefully we buy the pub, then we'll be into a recruitment process then of finding a landlord, a tenant, a chef, whatever it might be that the route we end up going down, but we'll be into that process then. Not sure how long that would take. Emma may have some views on that, but yeah, we'll be in, and then really once we've engaged or found our potential landlady, we're then really into a planning the. When I say opening, we intend to keep the pub open through all this process. In fact, it won't be ours to keep open until the day we buy it, but the brewery, the incumbent tenants will hopefully keep the pub open through that process. Once we've bought it, we can then start planning about an opening sort of relaunch type date. But when I say opening, it's not it won't be shut down and open. It'll be kept running, and then we'll do a relaunch date, and hopefully there'll be a couple of events around that as well. Obviously, and then when we bought it, then that's when really the hard work starts for the community, because we're going to need people to step up as part of a committee to take this on and get involved as much as we can. So buying it is really the start, and maintaining that success is going on year after year is going to be the hard part, and we need everyone to step up to that. So say we've also, Paul has kindly done us a sort of a social impact plan. So one of the things that certainly the people that are providing grants to us want to see is the social impact plan and how we're going to help the community and what good we're doing for the community, other than just having a pub. And again, that'll be in the business plan and available to read next week. We do intend setting up a marketing sort of promotion subgroup from volunteers within this room or online or from the community with probably better IT skills than some of us have got on the committee, because we're all a bit grey-haired. So we need some sort of younger people to engage, or some IT-type people to engage and really start pushing the pub on walking sites, wild swimming sites, whatever that might be, and getting it out there so we've got visitors coming to the pub. So we intend to launch a marketing subgroup to work on that area of the business. Obviously, we've got quite comprehensive financial projections in the business plan. That they're our best assumptions at the moment. So we've sort of taken what limited information we've got on income per head of someone eating in the pub, price of the beer, etc., cost base. What limited information we've got, we've taken that and tried to put a realistic uplift on that in terms of what we can do, in terms of letting the rooms, in terms of getting that marketing information out there and getting a bit more footfall through the village. We will have a grants section in there that Tony will talk about in a minute, and but again, that is evolving. Tony's coming with some new news this evening. I won't spoil his news, but new news this evening. So again, the document will change when I rewrite it tomorrow. That the document will change because we've got some new grants news to put into there, and saying that that's permanently evolving. And then at the end there, we do have a risk analysis section. So what if we, as any business plan would have, what if we just don't get the people in? What if we can't make it work? What if somebody else comes along and offers twice the price we're offering, etc., etc.? And we have tried to mitigate those risks as much as we can. We haven't got all the answers, but we have put some thought into it and tried to deal with a lot of those issues. So it will come out, the business plan will come out with a shares prospectus, a social impact plan, a bit of a grants section on there, the model rules of Plunkett, which, as Steve said, is quite a weighty document, but that'll come out with it. So if you want to read it all, there will be quite a lot of reading to be done. Or if you just want to pick on a section, then email in and ask a question, then great, we'll answer the questions as best we can from that viewpoint. Yeah. Tony, do you want to come talk about grants? Or? Hand over to Emma.
Okay, I think I'm covering property. So I'm not a surveyor and I don't know very much, but I've done overseen quite a lot of building work in my time at the hotels. And the property appears to be in really good nick, so that's really good. And it's much bigger, particularly upstairs, than we were expecting. And that's interesting too. And running these really small village pubs is really tough to make them viable over a long time. And we've known that because we've had some really good tenants over the years, and it's been tough for all of them. So what we've done is, when we've gone in and had a look and the property's in good order, is to have a bit of a look round to say, what could we possibly do differently? What could we tweak to uplift the revenue? One of the obvious ones is there is some accommodation within the pub for the tenant. If they didn't need that could bring in quite a lot more accommodation revenue, for example. I was told that many years ago there used to be an additional dining room in the pub, but that would make the kitchen very small. These days you can pop up outside cooking units. Anyone who's been to the Standard at Porthscatho can see that their kitchen in the garden works. So again, that's a way of reusing the space to increase revenue and therefore make the pub more viable. It's also possible if we could roof over, have a little bit of cover over some areas of the pub garden, or there's a smoking shelter that isn't often used. Again, it's all about increasing dining at a time when Cornwall has lots of visitors, because we do really recognise that the pub is going to need to attract people from the outside, not just from the immediate community, because there's not always enough of us, particularly in the winter months. And this is the exciting bit, because everybody probably in this room is thinking of one pub that is the ideal perfect pub, and I can guarantee that every one of you has got a completely different vision, and this is going to be fun trying to unite all of those visions together. But I think that what we found in our group when talking to people is the one thing we really want is something that's much, much more than a pub, that really is a hub and part of the community that brings people together, that looks after people, that makes sure that people who live alone in the village don't feel lonely, that there's a warm heart to the village that really holds the community together and brings us to, you know, find a common ground. And that's what's really exciting about this project for me, because I think that we can really do that. We can put on a food offer that really brings people from the outside. We're only 20 minutes from Truro. That's a very big catchment if you get the food offer right. And I think we've got a lot of talent. We've got lovely stuff grown locally, and we could really do something quite different here. But it would be far more than a pub, I think. And that's what's really exciting. In terms of the key things on the property is I think we could stay open whilst we did most of the work. What you do in hospitality businesses is you do any sort of repair works on days when you're closed or if you have a very quiet week. So we think that shouldn't impact the trading figures in the business plan. And it could be phased as well. So there's a few bits and pieces that we think could increase revenue that might cost, I don't know, sort of 25,000. And then there's some bigger projects that might cost up to 50. It will depend on how much we raise. But over time, it feels like the pub could have a really exciting future. I think that's it. Did I forget anything, Paula?
So I've spent too much time sitting in the car today. Thank you. Yes, well, good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you. I do have some good news, I'll temper it and explain some of the background. I'd also like to make some big thanks to Julian German, Councillor German, who has approved the first application that we submitted along with colleagues for the Good Growth Fund, where we applied for £15,000 grant, which has been it's been approved. And subject to a final letter, but it has been approved, and I've been able to tell you that is the case. So the money will be coming into the bank account set up by the parish council specifically for the Save Our Ship programme. And that will give us access to expertise to make sure that our share offer is as successful as possible, to make sure that our community engagement, to ensure that our business planning is of a very high order. And it'll really give us additional support from within the Chaos Group, which is very kindly organising all the communication and the streaming and so on. So all the Chaos Digital team and members of the Chaos team will actually be continuing to support the Save Our Ship campaign, because there's a limit to how much volunteers can do. So we need to have support from professionals. And they are at the top of the hill in the Chaos barn, which I think is wonderful. So we're going to get that support. The additional piece of news is that thanks to Rosie, where are you, Rosie? Put your hand up. Rosie Posey lives in the village and is a great networker. And Rosie met a lady who was looking potentially to need some cleaning, and Rosie recognised or started to tell her about the Save Our Ship campaign. And this lady said, well, maybe I can help. Maybe I could do some introductions. And so in short, we were introduced through Rosie to Josephine Brown, who is the Southwestern Regional representative for what's called Architectural Heritage Fund. And they, in turn, are what's called an access point for the REACH Fund, which is a fund run by the social investment business. And they will provide funding up to £15,000 for investment readiness support and services. And so this morning I received a letter confirming that we had actually passed the first gateway. There are 2 gateways in total. So we're halfway towards another £15,000 to support this whole process of investment readiness and launch. So that's, hopefully you'll agree with me, that's very good news. We have a further application in which went in under the National Lottery Community Power Fund, which is an opportunity to work with the National Lottery to put collaborative groups together working in the community. So the Save Our Ship campaign, working with the Chaos Group, working with the Roseland Centre from St Justin Roseland, and indeed the Way Forward Group, which is a housing development group for community and social housing in the Roseland. And so we've submitted that. We've sort of notionally put £10,000 in for the Save Our Ship campaign. Whether we win it, who knows? But it is with the National Lottery, and the answer would be that we would then spend up to a year developing a plan for a massive expansion of community activity in the Roseland, but focused on those 4 organisations to begin with. So wish me luck, or wish us luck on that front. But we do have the representative for the National Lottery for the whole of the Southwest routing for us. So that's through Babs. So well done, Babs. I'm not sure if you're here, but thank you, Babs. And you may well be online. So thanks for all the support. No more information really about grants, other than to say that all of these grants are really supporting the key objectives of this particular campaign, which is to support the community in a whole series of different ways, including developing employment, maintaining existing jobs, developing the offering so that it can become an all-year-round offering, so that it can attract new audiences, so that it can work collaboratively with second homeowners and long-term residents, and some of the, anywhere in between. That actually all the objectives that Julian and the team at the Good Growth Fund have set out in the objectives become objectives within our business plan. And so it's going to be down to all of us really to understand what those objectives are and to support them in whatever way we can, but also to support the institution and enjoy the pub.
My handing, yeah.
Yes, thank you. It doesn't sound like hardship, really. Selling a trip to the pub.
Hello there, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. You might know me as the person who does the WhatsApps, the regular updates. I really enjoy doing them, and especially when there's been good news. I just wanted to say a few words about community engagement, and I think the key word really for us all in this endeavour is the word community and what that actually means to us. And I think the first thing we're talking about in terms of community engagement is our whole village and how the village is made up. It's people who live here, it's people who have had houses here forever, who come with family and friends. There are connections all through our village, like a beautiful network of plants. And what we try and do in this village, and what makes this village so special, and why my husband Nigel and Jim and Fiona, my lovely sister that I live with, what we love about Portlow is that special welcome that it has. And I think this project that we're endeavouring to do together is something that is going to bring our community together. Even if we don't make it, which would just be awful, but even if we don't make it, we've had the most wonderful reason to come together as a group of people in all our differences, in all our various places we live and how we engage with Portlow. That's been magic, and I think, that is an opportunity for all of us. That's what I wanted to say, first of all. The second thing I wanted to say is just like all the technical bits and pieces that we have managed to achieve so far. We've got our WhatsApp group with about 113 people so far. A lot of the people who have joined our SOS group are people who have lived here or have a history of coming on holiday here, and they really, really want to know what it is that we're up to, and they want to try and hope that we can secure the future of the pub, which has many happy memories for them. The other thing that we've done is that we do have a Save Our Ship email, which is saveportlowship@gmail.com. And we look at that regularly, and it's a place where people can ask questions, raise ideas. It also is sort of like our filing system, because everything that Tony's been doing, it's double-checked by being part of the process. The other thing that we've managed to do, and a key part about community engagement, is how wonderful it is that we have got the support of the Verrian Parish Council and all the people who sit on that council. And with Luke and Hannah as help, we have got a dedicated page on the Verrian Parish Council website. And on there, we will have regular news updates. So as soon as you click it, you'll see any news from us. But also, we've got a dedicated page where the pledge form and the business plan and the question and answer sheets and any other documentation that you might need in terms of making your decision will be there. So we've got that presence, which is lovely. Also, we know that the Parish Council have dedicated and put the funds, so any donations that come in, you know, they're looking after that for us, so it's all legitimate and above board. And then the last thing I wanted to say, because I'm sure you've got loads of questions, the last thing I wanted to say is that I think I talked about that network of routes that goes around the village. And something as special as this, and that has attracted wonderful attention, we have got good PR in terms of the projects, is that our reach, if you like, can go beyond that into really positive and different avenues. That means that we can offer the ship something different, because why try when, everyone else has? What's going to make this special? I believe that what's going to make this special, apart from the community owning it and coming together to make that happen, is all the various partners that we can go and work with, like Chaos, like these lovely IT gurus, as I call them, at the back of the room. Establishments like that. We can potentially work together with huge establishments like the Campaign for Real Ale. Tony tells me there are 160,000 members. 145,000 members. So if we engage with them and they pay £1 each, you never know. So sort of establishments like that we can connect with. So our network is going to grow, and that then will give us the key difference, I hope, to make the ship, really viable, good enterprise. So, as I say, we've got to be proud with what we've done so far, but we need you now to dig your roots in and send your lovely, hard-earned money towards our venture. That's it.
We've got a sixth member of the team here as well, Hannah, but Hannah didn't really have anything to add to that. But that doesn't mean that her contribution hasn't been immense to what's been going on. Now, I told you the team was good, and I think what's been shown tonight is how good they are. I've been so pleased by the fact that this is a project where there's been no negativity shown by people in Portlow and beyond Portlow in the Roseland to the project. Everyone seems to think that it is a very good idea that we're doing what we're doing, and they want to be involved with it and they want to help. The skills we've got on the working group, they're not exclusive. Other people will be called upon in due course to try and help us, if possible, in all sorts of fields. So we're not trying to dominate the project, but what we're trying to lead it, and then other people will be able to come in and help us in due course in all sorts of things, in more practical ways, perhaps, if we as and when we acquire the freehold, then in terms of renovation and maintenance, and then I'll come looking for the people who I know have those practical skills. So I'm going to throw open the floor now to questions. If you can put your hand up, I'll bring the microphone to, they've got a spare microphone there at the back, so they'll bring the microphone to you, and then you can broadcast to a wider world. So if you'd like to put up your hand and ask any questions, then the microphone will come to you. If you're perfectly happy with what you've heard, and I think it's been a wonderful presentation, so I can't think that there are any areas that haven't been addressed, but if there's anyone here, can you...
I can speak quite loudly.
Well, it's not for the room, it's for the because we're...
Because you're online. Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
I have one question, and I'm not sure that you'll...
Is the microphone... It's on.
Hello?
Yeah.
Right. It's a question that may not have been... You're probably still asking for information. Have you got any information from the brewery about running costs, gross profit, maintenance costs per annum? Has any of that data been provided by the brewery?
Would you like to answer that?
Thank you.
We don't have a direct yes to your question, that's for sure. We have lots of other pubs and models that we've looked at, got their accounts from. So we have a base load of information that we're basing our assumptions on. Have the brewery given us the exact numbers for the shipping as we stand today? No.
Has that question been asked?
Yes. So, Steve, do you want to take that?
The brewery don't keep the trading information for the pub. That information belongs to the tenants. So all we've been able to learn so far, specifically about the pub and its costs and its trading, is what we've been able to learn from a couple of meetings with Nick in the pub, and what the agent selling on behalf of the brewery is able to share, which is only the barrelage for the last 2 years. So the barrelage means the wet stock sales.
So you've got volume figures for that?
We know the volume for the last 2 years. Well, it's all wet stock counted in one barrel. Yeah. That's how they count it. That's not how they deliver it, I'm assuming, but that's how they count it. So we have the barrelage, which is actually more use than it sounds, because once you make reasonable assumptions about what's beer and what's wine and what's spirits and so on, and you can compare one year with another, and then when you can compare that with other pubs of similar size and you can see what their barrelage is, you can get a fair triangulation of what the weekly sales are for the pub. We don't know anything about food sales. We know a bit about accommodation because we know the rates, and Nick was willing to share with us the occupancy broadly. So we know those things. We have a reasonable stab at the costs it takes to run the pub, like the utility costs and so on. And we have a reasonable stab at what the normal rent is, not necessarily the rent they're paying currently, because that wouldn't be normal, but we know what the normal rent is. We know what kind of turnover a pub of that size needs to do in a year to wash its face. So we know that from brewery experts and from other publicans, if you like. So from all of that, as Brian says, we're able to build a spreadsheet that says, this is what you need to take each week, this is what you need to take each month, in food, in beer, and so on and so on. And that's why we're pressing on, and you'll see it in the business plan, but that's why we're pressing on, in the belief that we can make those numbers work once you allow for a little bit more margin on a wet stock, because you're buying it wholesale, not from a tied house. So that gives you a bit more margin. Even if you don't think of a beer uplift, you make more money per pint. And to Emma's point about reclassifying how you manage your food offer, once you build that in, then we feel comfortable that the figures we put in the business plan are not greedy, They're not ambitious. And we're not, as Emma also said, we're not being greedy about the refurb or the spend on the fabric that we have in mind, partly because it doesn't need a lot, partly because it seems wise to run the pub for a while rather than think you know what to do with the inside of it, especially as when we get it, it's likely to be off-season or heading into off-season rather than on-season, so we have time to play. Yeah? And finally on that bit is it's everyone's money. So we don't want to be going spending money on vanity projects in the pub when we don't know for sure. So we'll be very careful with that bit. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I didn't think that we've really covered it very much.
Yeah, no, I think we tell brilliant. Is that information going to be in the business plan?
Yes.
The data, the actual numbers?
Yes.
Okay. And I was also suggesting that if the pub is sold to the community, that they then can dictate what beer is sold in the pub. So they're not putting that on the table. Okay, fine. No questions. Thank you. Been brilliant. Thank you.
Jeff, you...
Good evening. Could I just ask the gentleman who's been dealing with the grant applications, how much of that 40 grand that he's been describing is actually available to go towards the purchase price? Or is that all earmarked for professional services from people as yet unknown?
Thank you. Yes, it is actually all earmarked to pay for professional services and for the development and progression of the business plan and for the investment readiness. And that's really the criteria for those particular grants. Now, as I see it, there are further grants which are possible and also loans at a relatively low rate of interest. But in order to qualify for those future grants and for loans, one needs to go through these processes, if you see what I mean, and document professionally the business development plan. And that's what we're doing.
It seems to me that you've got so much expertise, particularly from what I've heard, the description. It's been very thoroughly thought through. I'm just wondering why you need 40 grand's worth of professional services when you guys are doing such a good job.
Well, I think it's a very good point. And as I said, we're 7 volunteers. And so we have other things to do. But at some stage, we're going to have to hand this over to others. Some of those people will be volunteers, but some of them may well be paid. And we have to make sure that the basis for the business, that we don't just try and do the same thing all over again, that we actually do things differently and give it a chance of being successful. And so I think the additional thought that we're going to put into, for example, a farm-to-fork offer or a catch-to-plate offer, or the improvement, as Emma describes it, of the food offering, which we all believe is essential in this particular instance, would take preparation, it would take setting up, it would take capacity development and so on. So I think you'll find, hopefully, the plan is to spend the money that we're actually in the process of winning through the grants really well, and to help that sort of turbocharge the future.
Are there any time limits on the use of these grants?
Yes, there are, yes.
Which are 1 year, 5
well,
years?
Both of the grants, the Good Growth Fund has to be spent by the end of September 2025, so quite quickly. The Reach Fund, we have to demonstrate that we are within 6 to 12 months of sort of investment go. So it's a readiness preparation fund. So therefore, we're going to need to sort of demonstrate that we're going to spend that within 6 to 9 months maximum. So it's quite quick, quite short term, but equally, the additional funds, so we're going to have to raise, 500,000 through the share offering. We think 600,000 in total. Obviously, if we raised more than that's great, because then we'd have reserves and that could tide us through difficult times. But the readiness and the preparation for grants that are coming down the track, I think, is going to be very important. So it could be that we don't raise all the money through the community share option, but therefore we may need to look for grants to top that up, or possibly loans. I mean, that's down to, some business decisions that need to be made. But if we can access low-cost, unsecured loan funds, that could be very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. First of all, just thank you for everybody for your work done so far. It just seems incredible. The two things seem to be on my mind. One is, will we get the funds to buy it? And secondly, will it be viable to run in the future? Just on the first question about will we get the funds to buy it, you said you've done some informal sensing already. And I'm just wondering what degree of confidence that the steering group have so far that we will actually achieve that amount of money. I don't want to put a hands up here who's said, I'm going to, because it's all anonymous, obviously, but how likely is it going to be, do we think?
We as a group took the decision that we would approach people in Portlow, and we've not approached everybody yet, to ask to make how much they would be willing to pledge towards buying the pub. And that was not a binding requirement. People could back out if they saw the business plan and thought, well, we don't want anything to do with it. Or if their financial circumstances changed and they weren't able to afford the money when push came to shove. So we as a group started talking to people and asking them how much they might be able to put forward into share capital. And as a result of I'll make no secret of it. I think we're just about halfway there with the pledges that we've had already. It's pretty good, and we haven't spoken to everybody. We haven't gone wider than Portlow really, or property owners in Portlow or around Portlow. So that's given us a great deal of confidence that when we go to a wider group of people, there are people here tonight that we haven't spoken to who we hope would be involved. From the people we've spoken to already, there will be quite a wide share ownership. The pledges that have come in from a lot of different people. So that shows that there is a great confidence in the project from everybody in the village. And so you've got your pledges tonight. Again, it's not legally binding. You can always back out if you think something happens. And we just hope that the people who haven't pledged yet will share the confidence of those of us who have done already and make this a very wide owning community venture. So, I think perhaps some people in Portlow have been avoiding me when I sort of describe myself as the snake oil salesman, coming along and trying to sort of ask people if they'll be part of it, and try and show them the confidence I've got in the project and how it will be so good for Portlow in not just the next 5 years, but for the next 50, 100 years. If we don't make the project, then we can't get it back. This is our chance, and people have been very supportive. So you've got Sorry, I thought. So Deborah, you had another question. You said that.
Steve has a contribution which really builds on what Luke said.
I just think that we need to be a bit more direct about where we are and what we think we need. So from the work that really has been led by Luke, but all of us have made some contribution in talking to individuals and saying, would you be prepared to pledge some money so we can get our first flavour from that work? We think we're looking at £200,000 so far that people have pledged towards investing. That's excluding the grants. That's just from people saying what they would buy on shares. And what we think we need to get to is about 400 before we can sensibly go to the brewery and say we're ready to talk. And what we need from this exercise today is to fill enough people with enough confidence to make their pledges and give us a chance to get towards that number. If we can't get towards that number, then we're going to have another think about, worst case, is this possible? Best case, as Tony put it, are there other ways in which we might turn to raise the money? But any other way of raising the money is even more awkward than all of us chipping in. And I say chip in makes it sound like, you know, $2 bob each, but that's what it is. There's a lot of people that have an interest in, as Paula put it so eloquently, helping our community, and our community isn't going to be the same if we don't have the pub. So we need to help everybody to believe that we can answer your second question, which is it viable? And hopefully when you see the business plan and you see us, how we've been conservative with our numbers and our ambition in there, but we believe that even with that conservatism, we can make it viable. We need people to believe that we can make that work. Otherwise, we won't get through the first step. And if anybody needs more help in being convinced, then we can stay here longer. And we're all very happy to take more questions separately as well to answer any specific things that make somebody go, I'm thinking of it, but I'm not quite there. Because if we don't get there in this sort of time frame, then it will slip away from us.
I was just going to add a couple of other things. The thing that we would really like everybody in this room or everybody who's listening, if they can go and do, is if you can go and talk to your friends, your neighbours, because we will have a community pub if just about everybody in the community who can afford to contribute contributes. We won't have a pub if they don't. It's not going to be that a small number of enthusiasts can carry a lot of people who are like, oh, I think they're going to get there, so I won't say anything. We won't have a pub unless probably 95% of the people who can afford to contribute. It's as simple as that. And I think it's really, we're at a really good figure. We've had some really generous offers, but we all need to talk to everybody else in the wider community and get everybody in. In particular, there's one element that I think, and a real cheer needs to go to Luke, because Luke has been amazing going around and talking to people. You've done really, really well. We've also got one thing in the village which you'll all be aware of. There's an awful lot of for sale boards. And one of the things we're looking at as a group is, could we do some sort of offer where those people who are trying to sell a property can pledge, can buy some shares, and if the new owner of their property, when they eventually sell, doesn't want those shares, we would look at whether the committee would prioritise buying them back, because those extra bits of money could make the difference. They really could. And also for those property owners that are trying to sell, if the pub doesn't look like it's going to go down, they've got even less chance of selling, and they'll probably lose more off their purchase prices. So we're really looking at that, and we're going to come up with something to share with people. And if you can share that once it comes out, that would be really useful. Back over to Luke.
I'm just going to let Brian say something more, and then our friends from Grandpan would like to ask a question.
Just something we missed out there earlier when we were all talking. So the share pledge forms you've got now, that will be available online on the Parish Council website probably Tuesday now, maybe Wednesday, because we've only just finished it in the last day or so, and it's Easter weekend. So you can either submit it online, so again, confidential information, submitted just to the council online. You can fill in that form and hand it in tonight, or Paula has volunteered, you can put it through Paula's letterbox, care of Paula. So you can either do a paper version now, a paper version through Paula's letterbox, or an online submission to the council website. The only people that will see that information are the council and Paula. The rest of the committee will not know what anyone's pledged, and we want to keep it like that, just to assure you of the sort of the confidentiality of it.
Thank you. My name's Simon Fielder. I'm from the Grandpound group that's trying to buy the Dolphin. I'll stand up so you can see me. The only thing that has slightly concerned me, I think, is the fact that it's how you value a pub. A pub has got community value, a pub has got a bricks and mortar value, and a pub has got a business value. At the moment, from St Austell Brewery's perspective, it doesn't have a business value. If it had a business value, they wouldn't be trying to get rid of the pub. They wouldn't be trying to get rid of that pub together with the Dolphin and numerous other pubs that they're trying to get rid of. So it's not always just the question of raising all the money that they're asking for. I don't know how much they're asking for you. 550, yeah. So I think there is an argument for saying to the breweries, you're actually asking too much. You're actually asking far too much. You're in a different position to us because you're in a much more desirable village. But even so, even in Portlow, the bricks and mortar value of a business that's failed is not the same value as the brewery thinks it is. And certainly in Grandpound, I think we're fairly intent on negotiating very hard on the value rather than just trying to raise all the money that the brewery are asking for, because the brewery are asking for far too much. I don't know how you're feeling of that are.
Yeah, we probably have found an area where we can share information, because it will be helpful to plan that together. I wouldn't conflate what we're trying to raise with what they're asking for. They're two different things. Yeah, so we have no intention of paying what they're asking. We're just setting our stall out amongst ourselves about what we think we need to raise, because we need more than whatever we pay anyway for all the other things that we need to do. We deliberately haven't spoken with the brewery at all so far. We've only spoken to the agent to learn what they were allowed to tell us about the barrelage. And we won't engage with them until we get to a point where we're comfortable that we've got sufficient funds to be credible, and we'll think very carefully, collectively, about how we approach them when it comes to it. But it's quite different how much money we want to raise and how much we want to pay.
Just quickly, on behalf of the people online, Emma has said it's been really impressive to hear this update and the progress that you're making. Thank you very much. She also had a little request and said, please, is it possible to have the names and photos of the committee, maybe put somewhere on like the various parish council website? Emma did say it would be great to know who you are, because you're doing great work.
We'll have to think about that one. I don't think anyone really wants to see any more of me than they do already, but yeah, I'm sure that's possible. In the room, yeah.
Hi. I was just wondering if there's any thoughts of creating some merchandise to sell to visitors. I mean, we're getting into the holiday season now, more and more footfall coming through the village, and T-shirts or whatever. People want a keepsake, and if they're supporting something like a pub, people will buy into that. So I think there's plenty of potential there.
I think I'll have a crack at that one. Thank you, Paul. I think what's tricky for us is that we still have tenants in the pub, Nick and Jared, who are working really hard and serving people now throughout the holiday season. So until it becomes a place that we can market that it's a community pub, it's quite difficult to invest in that kind of merchandise. It's a brilliant idea. And I think, further along down the line, it's excellent. And unfortunately, if we are successful, it will be in the quieter months. But, there's Christmas coming up. But yes, so I think our difficulty is the fact that we can't market that it's a community venture and we're looking for donations, we're looking to sell merchandise when it's still an operating business. Until the place is actually sold. Is that?
Maybe we can merchandise Portlow, and funds going to the community.
Yeah, Portlow mug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Portlow.
Portlow, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've still got some Portlow merchandise that used to be sold at, at Tregaine Tea Room, but finding it is maybe a bit difficult. I think one thing you're talking about raising the profile of Portlow, and I think this is what we certainly need to do more. Some of the holiday let bookings for the last 2 or 3 years, particularly the last 2 years, haven't been great. And I think perhaps we need to market Portlow as well as the Ship Inn as and when we take over, because the village perhaps hasn't got as high a profile, even within the Roseland, as somewhere like St Maurs or Port Scatho. And I think we need to try and bring Portlow back up to the level it used to have. I mean, obviously in the past we've been lucky. We've had the Chamomile Lawn filmed there. We had About Time film, but we haven't had a big film project there for a while. So if any of want, well, I don't think Varian Players would actually sell, but if any of you has any contacts in the film and television industry, and just sort of tip the wink that Portlow would be a good place to come and film a series, it would be good. But we need to try and raise the profile of Portlow alongside the profile of the Ship Inn. So does anyone else have any more questions?
£1 interloper. First, congratulations on coming this far. We are on the same track and we know how much work has already been done, and we'll be watching closely, and good luck. I just wondered, you're obviously very keen to get the pub yourselves and keep it going. What if someone else were to buy it, or do you really think that's not likely to happen?
There is a risk if it is put on the open market. Somebody may come along and buy it and run it, and they may run it very well, and they may run it for a number of years, and it may be very successful. Speaking as a former district councillor and a parish councillor, one tends to find that sometimes people buy businesses with ulterior motives, so that people will buy a business and then run it for a year or two and say, oh, we're not making enough money on this business. Can we have a change of use to residential? Can we use the car park for extra dwellings? And that is, it's a risk. And it's a risk that we probably want to try and avoid. I mean, just everyone here will be familiar with the Pendower Beach Hotel, which was a thriving business and was bought with other reasons in mind, and has lain derelict now for 15 or more years. And that's the problem. Again, people buy businesses and then they run the building down, and they say, well, we need to do something to improve its appearance, can we do this and that? And so if we can avoid that scenario, that's why we're trying really hard to do what we're doing, and hopefully we can succeed.
In my spare time, I run a housing charity and I read a lot of planning law, and we're really looking at making it very, very difficult for somebody to come and do what they do to many pubs across the country, which is get their tenant to prove that they're failing and then try and turn them into accommodation and make some development money. And there's lots of things that we're able to do. And we're doing our very best to make sure that nobody tries to buy the ship and thinks that they're going to have an easy time flipping it into accommodation to make a few quick bucks.
Okay.
One more question. Has there been... Oh, sorry, yeah, testing. Has there been any dialogue with the Lugger Hotel? And if so, what has that consisted of?
I think I can probably answer that. Yes, there has been dialogue with the Lugger Hotel. The manager's been spoken to. At the moment, we don't feel that the way that the establishment that the Lugger is would fit well with what we're hoping to achieve in terms of the community priorities for the ship. I mean, a lot is still up in the air. When the business plan comes out, you'll see what we're planning to do with the accommodation, or hopefully to do with the accommodation. But it may be a somewhat awkward fit for the Lugger to be, say, managing the accommodation at the ship. It's not. We don't rule it out. It may be a possibility, but I think there'll be certainly would be great avenues for cooperation between the two ventures. They're not mutually exclusive. I mean, I had an old school friend who came to stay for a couple of nights at the Lugger. He had one dinner at the Lugger, and we met and had dinner at the ship one night. So I think that's the sort of collaborative approach that we're looking for. And the business plan is to try and to build on the success of other businesses in the Roseland for eating out, and to make sure that Portloe is on a par with those other businesses, so that people, when they come on holiday to the Roseland, they might have one meal at the Royal Standard, they might have a meal at the Roseland Inn, but we want them to be able to come and have a meal at Portloe as well. And I think it's trying to build on the successes of other businesses around and draw examples from that.
Do you think they would potentially make a financial contribution to keep the ship open if they weren't going to buy it? Because of the value that that gives their customers staying in the village?
We haven't explored that avenue at the moment because of the slightly convoluted ownership of the way that the business operates in terms of the ownership. I believe that the ownership of the Lugger Hotel is in one company and the management is carried out by another company. So that makes it slightly more complicated than...
They owned by the parent company owns both?
No, an operating company manages it for them.
So an operating company manages the Lugger. Yeah. So, right, do we have any other questions?
When you said you'd asked around and you thought you had £200,000 in pledges, what sort of proportion of those people that were on the Save the Ship or whatever, it was that 200,000 from? I mean, are we talking you've asked 50% of the people and 200, or have you asked 80% of the people and we're scrabbling around for the other proportion? Just a rough estimate.
Well, I went through the list. I mean, I sort of work on the property. In my own mind, I know virtually every owner in Portloe, every property, who owns what. There are some people that we haven't probably approached who are marketing their properties at the moment, who are various reasons have got to leave Portlow. But I think perhaps if I refer to a hard sell, we possibly only about 50 to 60% of the people who own properties in Portlow, and I haven't spoken to quite people who live that far outside Portlow, and so that's why it gives us a bit of confidence that once we start to go a little bit further, then we'll.
I'm just conscious of the fact that, you know, when you say people that live outside Portlow, there are quite a few of us here who have Portlow addresses who are outside the village, if you think of it, or you seem to think of outside the village, but we're regulars in the pub and we are Portlow residents. So Trevisky, have you asked around Trevisky? Probably. Have you asked Tregenna? Have you asked Port Holland? Is it just those that live within 2 roads in Portlow that count, or are you...
The answer to your question is kind of mixed. I mean, there's some people in Port Holland I've spoken to, there's some people in Trevisky I've spoken to. So the tentacles are working their way towards you. If you feel disappointed that we haven't... No, we as I said before, we did this exercise because we didn't want to come to a meeting like this with a situation where we didn't think we were going to get anywhere near it. We didn't want to embarrass ourselves. We didn't want to embarrass the village. So we sought pledges from people. And if we haven't spoken to you yet, we will come and speak to you. And any member of our group will speak to you.
I'm just trying to get an idea of the percentage of people that were interested or have shown interest that you've spoken to get that 200,000.
I just had a quick count, and there's, out of the 170 names we have on a list, there's about 65 we've spoken to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm casting my eyes around tonight, and then there are people. Yeah, there are people who haven't been in Portlow for the last 4 or 5 weeks, who are regular, who are property owners, who haven't had it. I don't want. As I say, I'm not. Yeah, I think it might be all right. That's all I can say.
We haven't even started on burying yet.
So,
well, I did, because I got an offer from somebody in Berrien today. So
I think we have to have the mic.
There might be a second one.
Are there any further questions then from anyone?
I've got one which is a bit spurious, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are 2 working fishing boats in the village. Oh, 3. Sorry, I'm stand corrected. Is there any chance that in the future they could provide products to the pub?
I think Tony has already spoken.
So, ideally hope so. One of the things that we've built into the business plan in the first phase is that we increase the proportion of food generated locally to be served within the ship. And that includes meat, vegetables, and fish and shellfish. And so we call it a farm to fork offer and a catch to plate offer. And so what we're going to try and do is to work up how to make that, how to turn that into a reality in such a way that the food can be produced with an excellent chef, that we can develop the reputation, that people start talking about the Ship Inn for all the right reasons because they've enjoyed it so much. They tell their friends. The publicity machine starts to work, and hopefully that will help to sustain the institution, sustain the community with great food, and also stimulate employment in the area and productivity within our local farmers and fisher fleet.
Okay, well, I think we've just about reached the end of the meeting now. Thank you all for coming in person. Thank you all, the people who are watching online and the people who watch it over the next few days. I've been overwhelmed so far with the generosity of people who've pledged money in difficult financial circumstances, and circumstances have changed a little bit in the last year or so. But what would really give me the greatest pleasure was that everybody who owned a property in Portlow was able to pledge, and the wider area, Tregenna, Trevisky and Camels, and but that would show, and I know that not everybody is able to pledge some of the figures that some people can. But that would really show that that was the true community project that we're looking for, so that everybody who loved Portlow, had properties in Portlow, had an interest in Portlow for the future, and would help preserve the asset, not just for the people who use it today, but for the people who will be using it for the next 100 years. So whatever you feel about giving, that would be very good. Please read the business plan when it comes out. Please look at the other documentation. If you have any questions at all, we're all available. I mean, everybody knows where to come and find me. If I can't answer the question, then I pass it on to the other more talented members of the team in their fields. But we're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to be as open as possible, and to make sure that people believe in this project throughout Portlow and the wider Roseland. So thank you very much again, and we'll hopefully see you sometime in May, I think, is towards the end of May. And then everybody sort of quotes Churchill, don't they? But it was when he said it about the Battle of El Alamein, he said, it's not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end. But I think tonight we've got to what he said El Alamein was, the end of the beginning, and now things get really serious. Thank you very much.